All right, are you all ready? Yeah? Okay. All right, well, first of all, I'd like to welcome you to the Entrepreneurial Center right here in this beautiful big new building, Donald W. Main College of Business. My name is Misty Davis, and I am the Department Chair for Legal Studies and Human Resource Management at Davenport University. And I am one of many speakers here today kind of kicking off the launch of our new Entrepreneurial Center. So I encourage all of you to attend each and every one of the segments that are coming from this date forward so that you can maximize your knowledge in this area should you be aspiring entrepreneurs, okay? So what I'm going to talk about this evening are the legal elements of a business startup. And simply what that means on the menu of what I have for us today is that I want to discuss with you the different types of business structures available for those wanting to open up their own business. So a nice big broad overview of what's available, and then also talk with you about some of the advantages and the disadvantages of each one of those business structures. Okay? And then at the end, I want to share with you some resources so that you can be naturally curious and go out and do some research on your own if you have further questions. Okay? So, to get started, selecting a business structure. Okay, so let's set the stage for a minute. You have a wonderful idea, you've done some market research, you have a business plan, and now you're ready to go out and you want to start a business. So, what business do you want to start? How do you want to structure it? So those are some of the things that folks don't always pay attention to until the very end. But I encourage you to start at the very beginning, because essentially what happens is that the business structure you select at the beginning is going to determine your personal liability as well as how you're going to be taxed. Okay? So this all boils down to your personal liability and how you're going to be taxed. So always kind of keep that up in the mindset when you start to go through things, okay? So for your consideration, remember we have our idea, we have our business plan, we've done market research, we've talked with people, we've consulted. Now you need to think about these items right here. For you personally, what kind of management investment do you want to make? Do you want to be the one that's running the day-to-day operations? Do you want to be personally liable for others' debts? Do you want your own personal liability for your own debts? When you pass, or if you decide you don't want to be in business anymore, do you want the company that you've created to continue? Okay? Nobody really thinks about that transferability factor, because what happens is you're going to see as we go forward, what happens when you die with your business? What happens to it? Can you move it to somebody else? Or if you just want to end it, can you sell it? So all of these initial considerations, profits, losses, do you want to share them or do you want to own them on your own? Do you want everything to rest on your shoulders and reap all the benefits? Okay? And then, of course, the big one is how do you want to be taxed? So when you think about your idea and your business plan and your market research and all of this wonderful stuff, you need to also start thinking about all of these items. Because what you choose here is going to help you make your business structure selection. Okay? Any questions so far before we move on? Okay. So the three that we're going to talk about this evening are the sole proprietorship. We're also going to talk about partnerships, and then we're also going to finish out the round with corporations. Okay? You guys all heard these terms before? All right? Pretty comfortable with most of them? All right. So let's go into a sole proprietorship. Here, I have a chart that we can kind of see. It's a little bit off the mark here, but this is kind of at a snapshot what the sole proprietorship is. So it's the easiest to form. Because if you selected sole proprietorship, there's still a whole host of things that you have to set up in order to get it going, right? All of the legal stuff behind the scenes that needs to get out into the open so that you can run your business. So to form a sole proprietorship, it's fairly simple and it's pretty inexpensive, okay? The management style for a sole proprietor, you are the only one responsible for the day-to-day operations. You decide who you're going to hire, who you're going to fire, the purpose, the moving forward of the business. Every decision rests on you. Now, that might seem like, yay, right? I get to make all the choices, but sometimes is that the best option? Okay? Do you want to consult with somebody else? Maybe sometimes you are a little ambivalent in this area and that you're going to need to seek help with, but in a sole proprietorship, you are solely responsible for the management of the business. Okay? The liability is that you have unlimited personal liability, meaning that if you are sued, and the business is sued, essentially you're being sued. And so the unlimited personal liability is that your assets, your personal assets, your home, your car, your personal effects, your retirement, everything can be grabbed onto to satisfy the debt of your business. Okay? So that always seems very scary, right? Are you like, whoa, I don't want anything of mine touched. But the thing is that you can always buy insurance, and you can help offset that personal liability. Okay, so it doesn't have to be the big scary monster in the room. It can simply be that you buy insurance up to a certain policy amount to help satisfy any debts should you be sued. Okay? Now, obviously with profits and losses, you're entitled to all the profits, but then you assume all the losses. Right? Make sense? And then taxation, now I have, my accounting guru in the back. So I am not an accountant, I am an attorney, but I am not an accountant. But from my perspective as an attorney, you're taxed at the individual rate, okay? So it passes through your personal taxes and you get to claim the profits and you get to deduct the losses. It's on your personal taxes, okay? So you don't have to file a separate tax for your sole proprietorship. Now this is one of those where we talked about the transferability. So what they call that is the dissolution of a business. Upon the death and or your decision to stop the business, to end the business ends. It's the end of the story. It just stops. Okay? Unless somebody wants to buy the business, but typically that's not the case. Because usually if they say Misty Davis, attorney at law, they want to hire Misty Davis, right? They don't want to hire Misty Davis, attorney at law, but then get a different attorney. They want my services. So usually that doesn't happen, right? The transferability ends. It just stops upon the death or my decision to say I'm just not doing this anymore. Okay? So that business just ends. So I want to go back to the liability, and I have just a quick sample because sometimes we start talking in abstract and it gets a little bit convoluted, right? So let's say we have an owner of a window business, has to measure some clients' windows. Okay, so these big, beautiful windows. When measuring a living room window, he trips, breaks a vase that's worth $500,000. Okay, the owner has an insurance policy for $250,000. The homeowner is awarded $500,000 from a lawsuit. So how this works, so you can kind of see a sample in action, is the first thing out of the gate for that $500,000 to be paid, the $250,000 insurance policy is going to cover first. Then the sole owner is going to sell some personal or some business assets of $50,000. And then the owner has to sell his own personal condo, house, make a profit of $200,000 to satisfy the debt of $500,000. Does that make sense? So that's kind of an example of how you can see a sole proprietorship in action and the personal liability of each, okay, of how that works. So, what are your thoughts on sole proprietorship? You have a great smile back there. You've been smiling at me. So what are your thoughts?
I think it's good. It's a high risk, high reward. So I think it's good as far as the reward side goes. But I mean, I guess everything with high risk, high reward.
Anybody else have anything to add? What do you got? You got something to say?
I don't know. I mean, it's just something you don't have to think a lot about. You're investing potentially yourself into this business. And as long as you have a set for anything to know the business grow, then trash, fall, it's just like you said, high risk reward, but
It's on you, right?
yeah, that's all I think about.
So if you didn't have the insurance policy to cover you in a sole proprietorship, then you are going to be out $450,000 personally. Okay? So you see if that having the insurance policy may or may not be worth it depending on how much money you're making and what the cost is and all of that, right? So those are things that you're going to also have to consider. That's just one form of business structure that you can consider when you go into starting your own business. Okay? So next up, we're going to talk about partnerships. In partnerships, there are a varying different level of partnership. We are going to focus on two, and that's going to be the general partnership and then the limited liability partnership. Okay? So it's same kind of similar chart, breaking it down, but we're going to cover one by one. Okay, the general first, and then we'll talk about the limited liability partnership. So the formation of a partnership is that it too is not a separate entity, meaning it's you that's going to be sued. Okay, so it's not considered separate. It's you that's going to be sued should there be a lawsuit headed down the pike. Okay, so the general formation for a general partnership is that there is no document needed to actually make it happen. Okay? It's always desired, as an attorney, right? It is always desired to have writings of everything to reflect what it is that you want. But it's not required because state law will kick in and let you know that, hey, you still have equal rights of everything. Okay? So basically, if it acts like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Okay, so the law recognizes that. So folks can't get away from, well, no, I didn't make any decisions, even though you've been knee-deep into it from the beginning. Okay, so just always keep that in mind. But no formal document is necessary in a general partnership, and that the management responsibilities in general are shared as well. Okay, so everything is shared 50-50. Now, the deal is that if you have a writing, you can divide that out. So let's just say that you and your best friend go into business, and your best friend is more of the doer, and you're more of you like the administrative work, right? You like to set up the jobs, you like to get the insurance, you like to do all the phone calls, you like to do the marketing. Like, you are this person, and your partner, your best friend, is more of the doer. So do you want all 50-50 split between the two of you? Maybe that's not a good use of your guys' talents, right, and your skill set. So you want to divide that out. Maybe you're responsible for 80%. They just get a yes/no vote on major issues over 150,000, right? So the thing is that you can divide that out with a writing. But if you don't have a writing, then it's going to be shared. The law is going to default back to the law, and the law is going to split it 50-50. Okay? Now, the liability part of it in a general, and this is always key, is that you, again, have unlimited personal liability, meaning you're responsible for your own negligence, but you're also responsible for your partner's negligence. Okay? And This is where the wonderful term of joint and several liability comes into play. Have you guys ever heard that term before? Joint and several liability? So what that means is that, so Mickey and I are partners, okay? And Wayne here falls at our business, and then he sues us, okay? He knows that Mickey might be having some financial troubles, so he doesn't want to name her in a lawsuit. So he just names me, right? So he names me, and he can collect, and he wins a judgment of $200,000. I have to pay that $200,000. Mickey's not in the suit. It's just me, right? So I have to pay the whole $200,000. Once I do that, then I can sue Mickey for the $100,000 to share that liability. Okay? So the joint and several liability. So one person can be sued for the whole thing, and then in a separate lawsuit, I can sue the partners for their share to make me whole again. Okay? So that's the term joint and several liability, kind of an example of how that would work. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? Okay. And then the profit and losses are, again, they're shared equally unless otherwise stated in a writing. So back to my example where maybe I do all the administrative work and then your best friend does all of the, the doing kind of work. Because this might be a little bit more intense than this, there could be a split where we say, I get an extra $10,000 in profits because I have to deal with all of X, Y, and Z issues, right? You're going to want to memorialize that in a document and in a writing so that it actually can fall back to that versus the law, which is going to split it 50-50. Make sense? Okay. So taxation, again, you're taxed as individuals on your filings, on your tax filings. You do have to file a tax document for the partnership, but the partnership doesn't pay taxes. It goes to, the profits have to be taxed onto the individual. So you get the individual tax rate. Again, the transferability issue, once a partner dies, one of the partners dies, the partnership ends. Okay? So, or the partners have to agree that the partnership ends. So again, that transferability and that longevity of a business is going to end. Okay? Now when we go to the limited liability, so we covered the general, now we're going to go to the limited liability. This, you can easily spot this. Okay, so the formation piece is that when you drive around now, I want you to on the way home, when you drive around, you're going to come across some businesses and they're going to have the comma. They'll say Davis & Davis, comma, LLP. Right? Have you guys all seen that before? They'll have the comma, LLP. That means that a group of professionals have gotten together to start a partnership. All right? And that has to be in writing, because what that does is it puts the public on notice. The law is all about notice, opportunity to be heard, okay? So it's going to put everybody on notice that there is limited liability amongst everyone, all right? So because it is so crucial, that's why it is required that you have a state filing. So the limited liability partnership has to be a state filing. General does not, the limited LLP does. Okay? And it has to state it in the name because that's what gives everybody notice. All right? That's why the comma, LLP. All right? So again, the management choices, those are shared unless otherwise specified in the writing. The liability is that, again, you are liable for your partner's professional misconduct, but only up to the partnership assets. Okay? So the partnership assets are going to cover the liability. They're not coming after you individually, which differs, right? You guys can all remember the distinction? Have we talked about? Is there something to add? No? Okay. Any questions about partnerships? I know it's a lot, and so I was trying to chart it out because it gets to be a big mouthful of all of these different structures. Okay, but the point is that there are many that you really need to sit and think about. When you do that initial consideration, all of those areas, what is it that you want to do? Yes.
So when you have an LLP, let's just say place to writing, that upon my death, my portion of the business goes to my husband and goes to my wife. So that means, in that sense, that I could then, for example, my spouse could be benefited with the sale back to that partner of part of that business.
Right, so you get the profits, but you don't get any, the partner can give out the profits, but they can't give over the control. Okay? Because it's the voluntary, when you look at a partnership, it's the voluntary agreement between two parties to be engaged in business together. So if one of those parties is no longer there, the other party hasn't agreed with my heirs to do business, right? I still am entitled to those profits passing through to my heirs, but there's no management control of how that works. It doesn't flow out. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so now the big corporation word, okay? So we've had sole proprietor, we've had partnerships, both general and limited liability, and then we're going to go to the corporation. So the corporation, the corporate structure, just as a quick refresher, right? So we have stockholders who are the owners of the corporation. They appoint the board of directors. The board of directors sets the policy and management of the corporation. And then they, in turn, hire the officers to run the day-to-day operations. Okay? So it kind of just funnels right down. So big down to the day-to-day operations. Now the big thing legally about a corporation is that it is a separate entity. The law considers it a separate entity. And that means it can hold debt in its own name and it can be sued in its own name. Okay? So it's kind of considered a person under the law. You can do business as a corporation as an actual person. Okay? It can be sued and it can hold debt. All right? So it is created per state law, and you have to file articles of incorporation and issuances of stock. You have to identify everything in that writing so that everybody, again, is on notice. This is putting everybody on notice in the law, right? That's our favorite word. We have to put everybody on notice of what is happening in that corporation. Okay? And, of course, we have those two different distinct corporations. I'm not going to go into those in great detail, but there's the public and then there's the privately held. Okay? So one is sold on market. The private is family held. It's a family held business. So the management is that it separates the ownership from the control. Okay? So I own it. Somebody else controls the management end of it and the day-to-day operations. And then they have to report to the board because that's who governs all of those decisions and moves the business forward. Okay? So the taxation part of it, this piece right here, this is always the key. So remember all the way back when I just said a minute ago, it's personal liability and taxation. So in corporations, as Mickey knows, right, this wonderful thing called the S corporation. The S corporation kind of evades that double taxation because in a way, the profits typically in a corporation are taxed to the corporation. So any profits the corporation earns, they're taxed to the corporation. But then shareholders also have to pay taxes on the dividends that they earn. Okay? So there could be a double tax there. So through all the legal loops and the tax code, right? They have this beautiful thing called the S corporation. And the S corporation is when you have to form your corporation underneath state law And then it prevents, if you meet certain requirements, that you can be taxed as a partnership. So it goes on the individual, and you pay individual rates versus the corporation paying and the shareholders paying. So it gets a little bit convoluted, but just so you know, when you're thinking of opening up a business, these are some things that you need to kind of keep in mind. All right? Now, the dissolution of corporation is basically non-existent because it just keeps perpetual going, right? Typically, it's unlimited transferability. If a shareholder dies, business just keeps running. There is none of that stopping point, okay? So, if they want to dissolve it, there is a very big burden they have to hop over. 2/3 of the votes have to say, yes, we want to close it down. So it's not like a partnership where they get together and say, yes, we want to end the business and we'll wind it up and out the door we go. There's more involved when you have to wind down a corporation. Does this make sense? Okay. Okay, so now the fun stuff. Okay, so some resources. So I'm sure you've done this in all your other courses, right? But I wanted to show you some. So if you go underneath the sole proprietorship. So for instance, you go down to the county clerk and you say, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do a doing business as, so a DBA, right? You have to do a name search. You have to make sure you don't have the name of somebody else's company. So I always like, oh, you're not seeing what I'm seeing. That's probably why you're all looking at me like, what is she doing? Okay. All right. So So when you're here, you can go right to the county website. So since we're in Kent County, I will just tell you, Access Kent has one of the best websites out there for the state of Michigan. It is a phenomenal website. So if you need to find anything, this is, in Kent County, this is a great place to start, okay? So you can just quickly do a business name search. You have this little drop-down button right here for the online services. It's phenomenal, it has everything right there. There's always a Davis, so at random, okay? I'm going to pull up, and it tells you the business name as well as address and city. So now if I just click on, okay, Davis Lawn Mowing, it's going to tell you who owns the business. Oh, you can't see anything. So a little bit wonky, but we'll work with it, okay? So it's going to tell you all the details of the business right here. So if you're trying to figure out who to sue, this is what people do, okay, all the time. So if they're like, who do I sue? Well, I think it was, this guy was on my lawn and I didn't know what was going on and he was irrigating this and blah, 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 right? And all the truck, this is why we have to have the title of the truck or the company name on the side of the truck so it's all legit, right? You go out and you search it, and if it's a DBA, meaning a sole proprietorship, it's going to be at the county level, okay? It's going to be at the county level. And you can find out who the owner is. So Charles here owns the Davis Lawn Mowing Company, all right? And it tells you when his expiration date is. So he's going to have to refile in 2022 in order to keep his business active, okay? So if you need to sue Charles for some reason, you're going to know where you can find him and where you can send notice to. There's that word again, notice, right? You all with me so far? All right, so now we'll go to the LLPs and the corporation. So the state of Michigan has this beautiful website that you can go on and find out all sorts of great stuff. So you can find out how to file. It has all the laws. It has forms and publications. If you want a limited liability partnership, you can do name checks. So for instance, let's do I want to find out if a business, if I want to name give me a corporate name in Grand Rapids area. Somebody shut one up. McDonald's? Okay. So I want to name my business McDonald's, right? So can I do that? Well, maybe, right? So search state trademarks and service marks. So there is a search, there's a database right on the State of Michigan website that I can search to see if I'm infringing on anything. Or I can search entity types. So if I go in here and I search by name, I'll search McDonald's. No results found. Oh, because I didn't spell it right. All right, so just quickly looking at this, you see instantly assumed name, prior name, limited partnership, corporation, limited liability company. It's identifying to you right there on the main screen what kind of business structure they're going under. And so by just looking at it, you know, right, what liability they're going to have, what kind of management choices they're going to make. All of this good stuff is right there just on the screen. And then if you go into, let's do, okay, so we'll do the corporation. When you get here, this is going to give you the breakdown of when it was filed, when it's due, and all of the documents for the articles of incorporation. It should be all right there. Now, when you look here, it's not going to be, because it's going to tell you that it was automatically dissolved back in May 15th of 1987. Okay? So it is no longer a business. It's done. So let's go with something else. Okay. So McDonald's here, this is in Royal Oak. All right? The number of shares is 5,000. So all that information that we were talking about in that formation piece of the writing and how you have to file all this, you're going to go here to these view document images. And it's going to show you articles of incorporation. So here, this is what an articles of incorporation looks like. It sets forth everything about the business and who can be notified, who you need to. So if I need to sue somebody, I know I'm just always, I'm not that sue happy, but if I need to, it tells you who the agent is that you need to contact. Because if you're a corporation, it's not like I can walk into Steelcase and be like, okay, here you go, you've been sued. There are channels, there's people that I have to actually contact, and I find that information right through this website by pulling up the articles of incorporation. I can see, it'll have like a different listing for the agent. I can click on it, I can find out where to send notice to, and there it goes. So that's the reason why you have to make it public. That's why you have to make it available to everybody, and thus the reason for the writing is because you have to be able to give the public notice. It can't be secret, okay? There's no secrets because that's not how our judicial system works, okay? We want everybody to have notice. So when you're filling out these forms and when your professors are talking with you in class, always kind of think about the backdrop. Why do you have to fill this out? You should be asking those questions. Why do I need to fill this out? And who cares if I do? You care because this is how everybody has notice. All right? There's always probably some law that backs and supports why you need to do this for all of these different business type of structures. Right? So, let me go back to here. All right, so if I can impart any words of wisdom as we wrap up, okay, is simply invest in yourself and always consult an attorney first, okay? And get an attorney that specializes in business law and even business law startups. Now, when you're starting out, that always is like, oh, it's just another expense, right? I had to do this, and I had to do this, and I had to do this. But the thing is that how you structure your business initially is going to help you in the long run because it's going to save you in your personal liability. You're going to know what you're getting yourself into. And it's going to help you on the tax end because you'll know how much you'll need to be paying in taxes. If it's individually through your taxes, putting you in an upper tax bracket, or maybe you want to keep taking deductions on your own, or if you want to be on the corporate end and creating the corporate taxation piece. Okay? Right. And that's all I have for you. Thanks for your attentiveness, and I'm open for questions.
Are there any questions for Dr. Davis first? Do you have anything? No?
Of course, right?
What's the difference between an LLP and an LLC?
The LLC is basically, they're essentially the same. It's just the LLP is for professional. It's like a professional corporation. So accountants, lawyers, and the like. The LLC is more open to everybody. Again, it's just, it combos the partnership and the corporation. So it's getting the benefit of both worlds. So you're taxed as a partnership, but you get to behave like a corporation. So it's just, it's the hybrid between a corporation and an LLP.
Okay.
So it's just kind of this hybrid. So basically you can kind of see that people keep creating things to avoid personal liability, but get the tax advantages, but get the benefits of having a separate entity take hold. Yes, Pamela.
So you said it was a good idea to consult an attorney.
Yes.
And you're starting a business, you're saying, like you said, it's costing all sorts of money to consult an attorney, how do I do this? How do you select the attorney?
Yeah,
And
great
know it's a
question.
good attorney, and then how much does this, I mean, is it thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars?
Well, I think, and that's a great question, is where do you even start to get an attorney, right? Well, the great thing is, especially, every state has a state bar association. Michigan just happens to be where attorneys have to belong to the state bar in order to be licensed. It's not a voluntary act. So if we want to be licensed, we have to join the state bar, and they are the ones that do the licensing. Other states have a voluntary admission process, but in any event, our state bar here in Michigan has a wonderful referral service that you can call in, and they will match you with an attorney in your area that specializes in a particular type of practice. So you can call them. It's a free service. You go in, you say, hey, I have a need. I want to start up a business. I need a business attorney. They will say, okay, what geographic location are you in? It took me a minute. And then you will say, okay, well, I'm in the Detroit area. And they will match you right down to the street, if you want to, with an attorney in your specific area. So that's at the state level. We are very, very fortunate to have a wonderful bar association right here in Grand Rapids. And Grand Rapids Bar Association also has a referral service where you can, in fact, I think it's 25 or 30 bucks, go in and talk with an attorney for a half an hour, talk with that attorney who specializes in a particular area. They will go over kind of what you need, they'll do an assessment, and then they will say, yes, I can do this, or no, I can't, and if I can't, then I will refer you out to somebody who can. But you have to keep in mind, too, so I'm so glad you raised that. So you have to keep in mind, too, that when you're going through, if you're starting a business, right, it's not only just doing the business structure piece, trying to get what is it that you want, what is it that you desire as far as a business. But you're going to have property. You're going to have to be involved in a lease or a purchase agreement for actual property to run your business. You're going to have right down to renting a copy machine or computers or any of that. So it depends on how much you want that attorney's involvement. Do you want them to monitor these items, right? So you can go right down to the contracts. If it's pretty simple, then maybe you don't need them. If you feel comfortable trying to figure out a lease agreement for a piece of real estate to run your business, then maybe that's something you do. But this attorney can help you set up your business, work with accountants, financial institutions, and help you get all of that set up. They can also help you figure out human resource issues, right? Because you can't forget that piece. You can't forget, if you need to hire somebody, what are your policies? What protections do you have in place so that you comply with the law? Do you have a handbook written? Are you writing that handbook, or are you going to consult with an attorney? So you have to think bigger picture of what services do you want an attorney to do that can help you manage that business. So there's lots of little nuances that you can, if you get a full service package, maybe it's $6,000 to $10,000. I don't know. I mean, it depends on all sorts of varying factors. If you want just a consultation to say, hey, I put together all of these documents, can you take a peek at them and make sure that I'm on track? Maybe they charge you $500 to review the documents. They don't do anything, they review them, maybe make some suggestions and some recommendations, make sure you're totally not out in left field, and then they give you some feedback and you pay them a small fee. So there's lots of different ways that you can do it, but the State of Michigan website has a great small business starting point where you can kind of go through things. Did I answer?
Yes.
Okay. Does that make sense, guys? Quiet bunch. Are you guys headed to class right now? Okay. Well, okay. Maybe you should go eat, maybe run a lap around the building, and then go out. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.